Alright, let's see. I'm going to start working on the logic template here. So to do that, I'm going to click New, and let me give this a name here. So the crossover solver is pretty simple. So this won't take too long to cover this. I think everybody knows what a crossover is. So let's get one of these guys on here. So as I'm building, what I always like to do is when I put a new solver on, right, I always like to connect it up, because that's basically what the big advantage of BloodHound is versus writing your own code, right? Is that the big advantage is that with BloodHound you can see what you're doing in real time. And of course you can only see what you're doing in real time when you connect your solver up to the result node here. So let's see, so I have a couple of moving averages already on my chart here. So let's see, we have an EMA 20 and an SMA 14. Alright, so I'll leave the SMA 14 on here in indicator A, and indicator B is going to be our second plot that we want to find a crossover. So I'm going to change this to the EMA 20. Let's go over here. There's a little shortcut. If I want to jump down to the E's, all I got to do is click somewhere in this box and then press E on my keyboard. You can see it jumps down to the E's for me real quick. And alright, so there we go. There's our EMA. And make it a 20 period. And there we go. There's our crossovers instantly. Alright, pretty simple concept here. So let me cover some of the the various other settings in here. So we have evaluate mode, right? So the behavior section here, this behavior section, right? This is common. You'll see this in every solver. So what it allows you to do is manipulate the output here, right? And so when I say output, what I'm meaning is, what BloodHound is plotting. So you can see what BloodHound's plotting are the green and red bars here, right? So this is just a standard plot that all indicators have. So if we open up our indicator list, and we can see we have BloodHound highlighted here. And you can see we have a short confidence and a long confidence plot. And this plot is just set to a bar style, right? So we have a green bar style, so that's all. So that's what I mean by the output. So whenever I say output, we're talking about the long confidence and the short confidence of the plot. Right. So this evaluate, just a sec while I turn off Skype here. There we go. So evaluate allows us to manipulate the output of any particular solver here. So evaluate both, that means the solver will evaluate long signals and short signals. Now if I put it on long only, you'll see that all the short signals disappeared. So the solver is only going to evaluate the long signals, or the long side. And of course, short only, same thing. Now we only see the short signals there. Right, so that kind of gives us a way to control what each of the solvers are evaluating or calculating. So before I get ahead of myself, it's always a good idea to name your solvers here. So this is a SMA 14 crossing over a EMA 20. So, and I always like to leave the name of the solver at the end there, just so I can quickly identify which solver I'm using. So, alright, so let's put our evaluate back to both. And so the next one is invert output. So let's see, let me mark a couple of bars here. So I'm marking the signals. So this toolbar here is awful handy when you're building a system and kind of when you're debugging your system as well. So you can see that I'm able to use that tool, and I can put little marks where the signals are now. And then if I go back to invert and I turn it on, set it to true, right, we can see that the output now has been completely inverted. So this is an invert as opposed to reversing the signals. So we can see the little arrows where the signals used to be, right? So you can see this is a complete invert here. So now reversing the signals would take this short signal and flip it or swap it for a long signal. And it would take this long signal and flip it or swap it to a short signal. So that's what reversing would be. So, all right, let's see, let's go to the next one down. So the next one, yeah, let me cover the displacement. So whenever you're using an indicator value, right, so we have under type here, and so in this case I'm using an indicator. So whenever you have an indicator, you have a displacement option, and this displacement option does the same thing as the displacement option in your indicator list. Right? So what this displacement does is it will shift your plot forward. So let's see, let me set up an example here. Alright, so the white line, yeah, that's my SMA. So let me add another SMA on here. And I'm going to change it to a dot plot. SMA 14. Okay, let's apply that. And, well, I think I need to make the dots a little bigger. And, oh, oops. Sorry, I didn't change my plot style to dot. There we go. Okay, great. So now, right, we can see, so now you can see on the chart I've got two white SMAs, one a line and one's a dot. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the one that's a line, and I'm going to use the displacement and displace it by 1. And I'll stretch the chart out here to kind of exaggerate this. Alright, so you can see now the one that the line SMA, the white line SMA, was displaced by 1, and you can see basically it was shifted forward 1 bar. The best way to note that is, unfortunately, the SMAs are kind of flattening out, so it's a little tougher to see. So let's make this a 3 dot. Alright, so we can see that the dots stop on this bar, but the white line SMA was shifted forward 1 bar. Right, so that's what a displacement did, is it shifted it forward. So let me shift it forward 2 to exaggerate. So now you can see the white line was shifted forward 2 bars. Right, so we can see here's the dot here, which is a displacement of 0, and then the line was shifted forward 2 bars. So basically, kind of what effectively what that does is it allows you to take a bar, a historical bar, and shift it forward onto the current bar. Right? So as this white line is shifted forward, basically I'm taking the value of the SMA from 2 bars back and shifting it forward onto the current bar. So it's kind of a way of looking back on what an indicator is doing on previous bars. So, all right, so let's let me get rid of that extra SMA. All right, so this displacement is basically a way to look back historically. So if I want to see what the SMA was doing 2 bars back, I can use a displacement of 2 and essentially shift the SMA forward 2 bars. And all right, so now if you look at the crossover signals, for example, right, instead of the crossover being there, since I took the SMA and shifted it forward 2 bars, right, now the crossover is happening 2 bars forward. Or in a sense, basically it's happening 2 bars later now. Right, so instead of it happening back here, it's happening 2 bars later. All right, so let's put that back to 0, normal, and let's see. Let's look Let me show the look back period first, and then I'll get back to this crosses or curves when flat. So this one's going to be a little more difficult to find here, but the look back period, that essentially, whenever you're looking back, whenever you see this, the keyword look back period, essentially that's another way of extending an output or extending a condition forward. So in this case, we would be extending a crossover condition forward. All right, so if I set this to 2, you'll see now 2 bars are marked with that crossover condition. So what's happening is the solver is looking back 2 bars to see if there was a crossover. So, like for example, right, we get our first bar with a crossover, and the solver is looking back 2 bars, so it's looking back another bar, and as the solver looks back to this bar, there's no crossover, so there's nothing else to do. Now, if we move forward to the next bar here, right, there's no crossover on this bar, but we told the solver to look back another bar, and there was a crossover 1 bar back. So therefore, the current bar has a crossover output, right? Because it looked back 2 bars and it found a crossover, and so it still gave another signal. So that's what it's doing technically, but but the way we see it on the chart is the easy way to think of it is, hey, you just take a crossover and you extend it forward however many bars you need, right? So if I set this to 5, then of course we get 5 bars with that denote that there was a crossover had occurred, right? So it takes the crossover and extends it forward 5 bars, right? But what the solver is doing internally is that when when we get to this bar, the solver says, okay, I'm going to look back 5 bars and see if there was a crossover. And there was a crossover, so it gives a signal on this bar. So, all right. Okay, so crosses occur when equal. So basically that creates an allowance. So when, I think actually back here, this is probably a good example. When we look at this crossover, right, it looks like those plots are equals. For, as far as we can see, it looks like those two moving averages are equal to each other. But if we really stretch this out, I can see that they're not quite equal. They're off by, I don't know, a couple hundredths. So technically, for a crossover to occur, they do actually have to cross. But if you have some kind of an indicator that, let's see, let me see if I can think of an example here. There might be some indicators that run in the subpanel here that, indicators that range from 0 to 1 or something like that. And so there may not be an actual crossover, but the two indicators or the two plot lines might equal each other. So you can use this where if the two plot lines equal each other, that also would count as a crossover, even though they didn't actually cross each other, they just equal each other. So let's see if I can come up with an example for that. Yeah, I'm going to find a unique indicator to show this. Yeah, alright, I think this might work. Alright, I have this little indicator that I built, it's just called test signal generator, and it just basically just kind of outputs equally spaced, plots or signals, and I just use this for testing BloodHound in various scenarios. But you can see the indicator plots, it just plots up to 1, right? It kind of has an output just very similar to BloodHound. So, right, so each bar is just going to plot to 1. So let's see what happens when I build a crossover solver that detects when, either the green or the red plot detects when it gets to 1 as a crossover. So I need to put my test signal indicator in here. Alright, so I'm going to look at the long output here, the green output, to generate a long crossover, and I'm going to use the short plot, right, the red plots, to generate a short crossover. And I'm going to use a fixed value, so I'm going to see when the indicator crosses over the value of 1, right? So you can see right now there's no crossover. If I set this down to like 0.5, right, we get some crossovers now. So they're actually, it's hard to visualize those crossovers when you're using a bar style. So let me change this to a line. That's going to be easier to visualize. Alright, so now And also what will help is I'll draw a line at approximately 0.5. There we go. So now we can see whenever the green plot crosses 0.5, right, we get our crossover signal, right? And even if I put 0.99, right, there's still a crossover signal, but if I put 1 in there, the crossover signal goes away. And so we can see here, if you look on the right edge of the chart, right, the green plot, it went to 1, right? It went to 1, so there's actually technically no crossover because the test signal generator, green plot, went to 1, but we're looking for it to cross over 1, right? So there's technically no crossover, so that's why there's no crossover signals. Now, if I set this to true, right, we allowed for an exception. So now, whenever the indicator actually plots to 1, whenever the value gets to 1, now it actually counts as a crossover, like that. So we can allow for exceptions, you know, for odd um, indicators such as this, right? So, all right. Let's see. And so, okay, I'm going to put it back on our moving average crossover signals here. All right, so let's get down to the outputs here, right? So normally you want to see crossovers, you know, in the direction of the crossover, right? So in direction, what that means is, right, whenever the red line crosses the white line, whatever direction the red line crosses the white line, so whatever direction indicator A crosses indicator B, right? That's the direction of our signal. I'm sorry, I'm speaking backwards here. So whenever the white line, so the white line is our SMA 14. Whatever direction that crosses our EMA, that's the direction of the crossover, right? So the white moving average crossed up over the red, and so we got a green signal because it crossed up, right? So our output is going to be in the direction of the crossover. So that's the normal output. So if for some reason we want to detect when there's no crossover, I can do something like this. Right, and you can see basically we get a long and a short output when there's no crossover. And when there is a crossover, there's no output at all. So that's, I don't really have an example of why or when you'd want to use that, you know, but it is there in case you ever need it or come across it. Now, crosses against direction, this is probably the second most commonly used output here. Essentially, this is just going to reverse the output, right? So now, instead of this being a long output for this long cross up, right, it's now a short crossover. So essentially, it just reversed the directions, right? So if I set this back to 0, put it normal, right, that is now a long crossover like normal. So, and let's see. So here's another one, a decreasing output here. So let me put 0.2 in here. Now, right, normally that's not going to do anything. This really only has an effect when the look back period is set higher. So let's set our look back period to 2. Now, if you look at the output here for BloodHound, you see how the second bar decreased? it decreased by 0.2. So let me set my look back to 3, right? So now you can see each bar is decreasing by a value of 0.2, right? So it's kind of, it adds a decaying effect to our look back. So if I set this to 5, right, we can see each bar decays by a factor of 0.2. Now, if I go much higher, really it's not going to do anything, because by the time we get to the 6th bar, it's decayed to 0, so it just has no effect, right? So if I set it to 0.1, there we go, then 10 bars decaying by 0.1, we can see all those. So that's what this decay does, is it allows you to incorporate the fuzzy logic. It gives you some control. Oh, if you are using the fuzzy logic, it gives you some control over that. So that's the only time you'd ever want to use this decay here, is if you want to use the fuzzy logic capabilities of BloodHound. Right. So all right, we'll set that back to 0 and set that back to 1. Let's see. Okay, yeah, here's, let me kind of show another example of a little more sophisticated use of the crossover solver. So here's a very common question we get asked a lot, which is looking for a double crossover on the stochastics. And yeah, here we go. So a double crossover on the stochastics is looking for when our stochastics crosses down below the 80, and when the stochastic crosses, let's see, right there, yep, oops, wrong arrow, let's use a green arrow, and when our stochastics crosses up above the 20 value there, right? So we kind of, these are the only two crossovers that are of interest, right? So we don't want to see that crossover and this crossover are of no interest, right? So we don't want to see those two. We only want to see, crossing down the 80 and crossing up above the 20. So to do that, because we're using an 80 and a 20 value, it's going to require two crossover solvers, right? Because you can only, let me go back to my, so this is my crossover, right, where with the test signal generator. Remember, I looked for it to cross the fixed value of 1. So with the stochastics, we're going to look for it to cross, 80 and 20, and of course I can only put one value in here. So it's going to require two crossover solvers to do this. All right, I'm actually going to delete this solver here because this is a custom indicator, and since you guys won't have this on your system, I'm going to delete that, so that way you don't get an error message if you decide to download this template here. So let's delete that. There we go. Alright, so let me grab, well, yeah, I'm going to grab two crossover solvers here. Alright, so this first one, I'm going to look for the stochastics to cross the 80. So let's set up our stochastics indicator first. and I'm just using the default settings here. And the green line is my %D, so that's the smooth line. And so next, indicator B, that's going to be a fixed value, right? So that's going to be our 80 value. Right, so there we go, simple enough, right? We got, right, our stochastics crossing the 80, and so remember, we're not interested when the stochastic crosses up above 80, so we don't want this long signal here. We're not interested in that. So what we can do is go back to our evaluate and show the short only signals like so. And so there we go. We only see when the stochastics crosses down the 80 there for a short crossover. So now we can take this other solver and do the same thing for the 20 line. Right, so once again, we'll set our stochastics indicator up. Right, I don't need to change any of my settings. And next we'll go down to indicator B, set that to a fixed value, and we'll set that to the 20. And let's plug that in so we can see it. There we go. So now we can see our stochastics crossing that 20 line. And once again, we're not interested in this short crossover. We only want to see that long crossover. So let's go back to our solver and change our evaluate to long only. Alright, so there we go. We got two solvers showing us the crossovers that we're interested in. Right, but we only can see one crossover at a time. So the next step, the last thing to do, is we can use an OR node that basically takes these two crossover signals and joins them together into a single output, like so. Alright, so there is the double stochastic crossover, as it's commonly referred to. Right. And let's see. I'm trying to think of some other examples here. Well, actually, let me take a look at the questions on the board here and see if there's any questions on this. So, all right. Well, I don't see any questions on the crossover solver. So, yeah. Let me just kind of leave you with one note about the crossover, right? So, actually, let me kind of relay a difference from the crossover to the comparison solver here before let me wrap it up with that, right? So as you can see, a crossover is a single event, right? A crossover only occurs once, at the point of the crossover. So let's say, for example, a part of your system is, let me clean up my chart here. Let's say a part of your system uses two moving averages, and whenever one moving average is below the other, right, you can take shorts only or longs only. So you're using, you're looking at two moving averages, and that's kind of determining your trend direction. So, right, if our white moving average is below the red, then you're taking shorts only. And so a lot of people say, when the white moving average crosses the red, I can take shorts only. So if that's kind of your condition, you don't want to use the crossover, because you can see that you wouldn't use the crossover as a filter for your trades, right? So if the white line being below the red line is kind of a filter for your trade signals, you don't want to use a crossover as a filter. Right? A crossover is primarily triggers. It's kind of like one of the main triggers of a signal. So if you're using, two moving averages as a filter, for example, what you really want to use is the comparison solver as a filter. So let me just set this up real quick. So I set that up for an EMA 20. Right, so the comparison solver is used as a filter because you can see that we're getting a continuous output here, and that continuous output is what can be used as a filter. So if you're using, this comparison solver here, and let me just give it a name first. All right. So with this comparison solver, if you hook this in to an AND node with the rest of your system, right, when the SMA is below the EMA, since there's only a short output, only short signals could occur. Whereas a crossover solver, with a crossover solver, you wouldn't be able to have any signals when the SMA is below the EMA. You only would have a signal at the crossover event, right? So crossovers don't work as a trade filter. They only work as a trade signal. So a comparison solver is what you want to use for filtering, right? So that's the major difference there. So, all right, I think that covers it for the crossover. And all right, so Gary's asking me to repeat what is a double stochastic crossover. Yeah. So there. Let me rename this OR node here. All right. So a double stochastic crossover, simply put, is when our stochastic crosses up above the 20 or 25 or whatever you want it to be. Right. So the stochastic crosses up above, above the oversold area, and then the stochastic has to come up to the overbought area, and then when it crosses down, you get a short signal. So that is what a double stochastic crossover is. Or sometimes shortened to just a double crossover. And there we go, there's a little better example. Right, so we're ignoring when the stochastic crosses into the oversold. Right, that's how this kind of methodology is taught, is that you're ignoring the stochastic when it goes into the oversold, and you're only interested when the stochastic comes out of the oversold area and crosses up. All right, so Eldon would like, let's see, a short signal. If price is within 5 ticks from an upper Keltner channel. Let's see, yeah, okay, so we want a short signal when price, so Eldon, so this goes for all you guys. When you say price, you have to, define what price is, because, we normally look at price as a candlestick, and a candlestick has 4 prices. So price is very generic. Yeah. So you have to be very specific, because in NinjaTrader, to give you guys an example here, let me go down to Chameleon. Right? If we look at Chameleon, the purpose of Chameleon is Chameleon exposes all of the prices available in NinjaTrader. So you can see that there are 8 prices available. So when you say price, you have to, explicitly define which price you mean. But I guess most of the time, you're probably just talking about the closing price of the bar. But, in some situations, you might mean the high price or the low price of the bar. Um, so when you guys say price, you always have to define it exactly. What price are we talking about? So, all right. So Eldon um, would like a short signal when price is within 5 ticks from, let's see, an upper Keltner channel. Let's see, and a long signal or a long output when price is within 5 ticks from the bottom Keltner channel. All right. So Eldon, I'm just going to convert price to the closing price. So, all right. So give me a moment to set my chart up and get these indicators on here. All right. So we want a Keltner channel. Let's get that on there. And let's see. All right. So I'm just going to use a 1 and a 10. All right, let's see. I'm going to switch this over to range bars, so we get a little, so we get a little more interesting look and price here. So let's see, oil. I'll go to a 5 range, and actually, all right, I'm going to make an adjustment to the channel. So let's go to a multiplier of 2. All right, there we go. It's a little more interesting to work with. All right, so we want to know when the closing price gets within 5 ticks of either the upper band or the lower band here. All right, let me start a new logic board. All right, so let's see, within 5 ticks of the Keltner band. So to do this, we're going to do a comparison, right? So we're comparing the closing price to the upper band or the lower band. Let's connect this in here. All right, so I'm going to name my solver. So we're going to look at the close price and compare it to the Keltner bands. And I'll just go ahead and put in here 5 tick. All right, so first thing we're looking for is price, right? And the closing price in this case. So we're going to change our type to price. And this defaults to the close price. So we're looking for the close price. That's good. The next step is we want to know when it gets within 5 ticks. So I'm going to set my large amount and small amount to 5 ticks. And then next, we need to set up our Keltner bands here. So let's change our SMA over to the Keltner. And I do need to match my settings on the chart. So I'm using an offset of 2, a period of 10. And okay, so now the next step is to set up our plots. All right, so when price gets within 5 ticks of the upper band, Eldon wanted a short signal. So we're going to use the upper plot here to generate a short output. So we're going to select the short, and when price gets within 5 ticks of the lower band, we want a long signal. So we're going to switch this over. We're going to use the lower plot to generate a long signal, like so. Alright, so now the next step is we have to change all of our outputs here. So let me clear everything out. I'm just going to set those all to 0. Right now, if we look at how this text is written, right, we have A equals B within, and right now it says 0 ticks. So some computers you have to just click on and click off to get this to update, and some machines it just updates automatically. So not sure why that is. It seems like some kind of a Windows issue. But if your description doesn't update, so right, it says 5 ticks because I set my small and large amount to 5 ticks. So if your description doesn't update, just click off and click back on. So we have this A equals B within 5 ticks. So that's essentially what we want. We want to know when A, and remember A is set to our closing price. So we want to know when the closing price equals B, which is the Keltner bands, right? So B is our Keltner bands. So when the closing price equals our Keltner bands within 5 ticks, we want an output. We want a long output. And look, so there we go. There's our first long output there. So the closing price came within 5 ticks of that band. Let's see, it didn't quite there, but here we go. There's a bunch of areas where it came within 5 ticks, like so. So far, so good. And we're going to do the same thing for our short output. So, well, before I get there, let me kind of explain, right? So the reason why this long output, we're only getting a long output when price is within 5 ticks of the lower band. The reason why is when I go into my indicator settings, remember I selected the lower plot is selected for the long output only, right? So the long output is only evaluating our lower plot, or the lower band. And so the short output, when that solver gives a short output, it's only using the upper plot to evaluate for shorts. So now when I set my short output here, A equals B within 5 ticks, set that to 1. Now we're going to get a short output, right, when price gets within 5 ticks of that. So there you go. Pretty straightforward there, Eldon. Alright, so using a minute or range bar, let's see, we're looking for, I guess, 2 to 8 red bars, basically down bars. And on the 9th down bar, we're looking for a wick that's at least 80% of the whole bar. Okay, so let's see here. Let me see if I can find that on my chart. I guess it's probably going to be easier to find something like that on a range chart. So I think what Darren's looking for is we're looking for a number of down bars in a row like that, and then the reversal bar essentially would need to be a doji. So for a range bar, it would have to be a doji for the reversal bar. Right. So this bar here would need to be a doji. In order to have an 80% wick of the total length of the bar, this would have to be a doji. So at least for, let's see, a 5 range, I guess if I made a 10 range, it wouldn't have to be a doji. It could have a small body, but let's see if I can find something like that. Here we go. I think I found something close enough. Let's find this right here. So we have 6 up bars, and I think with a 5 range, yeah, we have a wick. Looks like we're going to have a wick that's 4 ticks and a body that's 1 tick. So that's going to be 80%. Yeah, the wick's going to be 80% of the entire bar. Yeah, I think this will work. Alright, so let me get started here. So the first part's pretty easy. Looking for a certain number of bars in a row. We're going to use the bar direction solver. It's going to be our easiest way to do this. So if I plug that in, so let me look for, we'll look for six bars, like so. I'm going to change the mode to all or nothing. Right? So when we look at this, right, when we get 6 up bars in a row, bingo, on that 6th bar, we get an output here. We get that identified as a long trend. Let's see if there's any down. Yeah, there we go. There's a downtrend like that. But looks like the wick's not long enough. So, okay, we'll just stick with our example over here. Alright, so we just looked for, right, 6 bars in the same direction. Like so. That part was easy. So now the next step is to detect our wicks. Let's see. But first, let's see. Oh, yeah. Before we get there, let's keep in mind that what we want to see is we're actually looking for a reverse signal here, right? So we're basically this system is looking for tops and bottoms. So it's trying to pick reversal points. So when we get this long up move, we're actually looking to generate a short signal here. So yeah, right. So we need to take this long signal and convert it to a short signal, because that's ultimately what we're looking for on the next bar here, this next bar. So that what we can do, let's see. Yeah, we're going to use the long short modifier. Connect that in, and bingo, done. So the long short modifier, its default mode is set to swap. Right? So all it did is it just swapped that long signal for a short signal. So it just reversed them. So I'm going to change the name on this guy. We'll just call it a swap, because that's what it's doing. Oh, and I accidentally deleted it. Alright. Alright, so we got one piece accomplished there. So we're now getting a short output when we get 6 bars in a row. However, we need to get this short signal. We need to get this short signal moved over to the reversal bar here, onto this bar. So we're going to use a look back to do that. And once again, the look back, its default settings is going to shift that signal forward. Right. So if we take a look at, the swap here, right? Our signal's on the 6th up bar, and if we take a look at the look back, we can see it got shifted forward 1 bar. So what did the shifting is a displacement, right? This look back has a displacement feature in it. And it displaced it by 1. Right? If I want, I can displace it by 3. So as I was showing you earlier in the crossover solver, right, it's basically taking our output and just shifting it forward, or displacing it forward, like so. And so for this particular case, we can just use the displacement, right? You might also use the look back to right, this look back period does the same thing as the look back period in that crossover solver. So let me show you that. So if you remember from the crossover solver, right, we're looking at a crossover solver here. It has this look back period, and I showed you how that works. So if we go back to this look back function node, it also has a look back period, and it functions the same way. So let's set this look back to 3, and now this mode opens up, and the way the look back node works on the solvers, so any solver that has a look back period, the way it works, any solver that has a look back period, the way it works is the mode is set to max. So you don't see this mode in the solvers. This mode is only available in the function node, but the solvers basically are using the max mode. And so now you can see that what I did is, right, we took this short signal and we extended it forward by 3 bars using our look back period in the look back function node. Right, so this look back function node is a way that you can take any solver, right? So for example, right, this bar direction solver, it doesn't have a look back function, right? It doesn't have a look back period built into it. So we were able to use the function node to do that. Let's see. Let's see some of these other solvers I built. This comparison, and you can see the comparison doesn't have a look back either. There's no look back for the comparison. So if you needed to add a look back period kind of functionality to the comparison solver, right, you can use this look back function node to add a look back period. So, alright, so let's set this back to the way we need it. Right, so this is a very simple set of conditions. We're looking for up bars, and then the next bar has to be our reversal bar. So I can just use a simple displacement of 1. And so there's the first condition, getting so many up bars in a row. And our output's on the correct reversal bar that we want the signal on. So now the second condition is we have to find those wicks. Alright, so let's work on finding those wicks. And let's see. Yeah. Just trying to remember how to do this. So I know we need to use a comparison solver. And what we're going to be doing is comparing various price points on the bar. Let's see. So in this case, yeah, in this case, we're going to compare the high price to the open price of the bar. Yeah, I believe that's what how we're gonna tackle this. Alright, so let me start setting some things up here. And I might start doing some experimenting. So, you don't always have to have this all figured out in your mind first. One of the beauties of BloodHound is if you can at least get yourself pointed in the right direction, then you can just start playing around with the solvers to discover and get what you want. So, all right. So let's see. First I'm gonna try comparing the high price to the open. Let's see. So and we want a short signal here. So I'm going to use the high price to generate a short signal. So let's see, we got short. And so I'm going to use the high price for short. And for a long signal, we're going to use the opposite price point. So for a long signal, we're going to need to use the low price. And we're going to try comparing it to the open price first. All right, now the key here, the real key here is to get our distances set correctly. So instead of using ticks, we're going to use ATRs, and we're going to use ATRs in kind of a different way. So to get this to work, we have to use an ATR with a period of 1, right? So there's no averaging. So the ATR, right, is called the average true range, and we're just using a period of 1. So that means the ATR indicator is giving us the average true range of just one bar at a time, each bar at a time. And let's see, the value, if we're looking for 80%, that's 0.8. So we're going to put a value of 0.8 in there. And that doesn't seem to be working. Let's see. I may need to do something like this. Let's try this. We'll just knock that down 1. And it's not working either. So let's see, if I read the description of the output here, alright, so we have A, and in this case, A is our high price. Oh, no wonder. Okay. Let me reset all these back to 0. There we go. So we're wanting a short signal in our example here. So in this spot, we're looking for a short signal. So there we go. So if the high price, which is A, is greater than B, which is open by 0.8, yeah, there we go. So I think that will do it. And yes, that does it. Now, as you can see, we are getting, we are getting short signals other places. But what's important is when we have these down bars like this, essentially, I can see when we have this down bar and we have this down doji, we want to have a short output because that's what this one solver is looking for. Now these other bars that have a short output, right, those are going to get filtered out. Those are going to get filtered out by this other logic here looking for 6 bars in a row. So we don't have to worry about these other miscellaneous short signals because they're going to get filtered out by our 6 bars up or 6 bars down logic. We're just concerned to make sure that this comparison solver is finding our essentially our down dojis here, like so. And let's make sure it's working. And actually, I think I can. Let's put this back to 0.8. 0.8. Yeah, there we go. So we still have these down dojis marked like so. And I need to set my long output. So I'm going to typically, if you're typically, right, if your short output is using the upper section, your long output is typically going to use the lower section. So normally, a typical use of these long and short outputs for the comparison solver is usually you're going to use opposite outputs here. So if your long output is using the A greater than B, then typically your short output is going to want to use A less than B. So normally you're going to want to use opposite ends of these outputs here. And alright, so we can see now that these up bars, all the dojis are marked. So I do have that guy marked. Now this up bar that has a wick that's too small, right? It's not marked by a long output, right? This bar has too short of a wick and it's not marked. And let's see, for some reason this guy's not marked. I wonder why that is. Let's try setting this. Yeah, alright, so here's an odd thing about oil. So see how this one's marked, but this one's not marked? One of the odd things about oil is it doesn't trade in tick increments. Oil is notorious for trading in tenths of a tick. If you actually look at the trade prices, if you look at the order flow coming through, you'll see quite often that somehow these big institutions are able to trade in like tenths of a tick. So therefore, right, the open price of this body here was, I guess the body of this bar is just slightly larger than one tick, because the open price traded just less than a tick. So let's see where it. So the open price of that bar is $59.98. It's probably $58 and 0.979 on the open price. It's probably 0.979 or 978, something like that, right? And NinjaTrader just rounds the display up. So just be aware that oil is very notorious for trading in tenths of a tick. So if you want to use this on, so when you're building stuff in oil, don't be surprised to see stuff like this. So what you can do is we can kind of create an allowance here. I can go back in and kind of adjust my settings here, and like so. Yep, see, look at that. All I had to do was knock it down by 0.02, and it picked that up. So this just kind of showed that, yeah, showed that this one bar here didn't trade on a tick, but it traded on a tenth of a tick. Okay, so there we go. So we kind of created a little bit of an allowance there, and I don't actually need that output there, so that works. Alright, so what we were looking for is making sure that these up bars have their wicks like so. Okay. So we have we have our down bar with the wick detected. We got our 6 bars in a row here. And the last step is to join this together with an AND node. Alright, let's take a look here and see if we find any other signals. Hey, alright, good, there we go. There's a long signal there. Great. Alright, there's another short signal. Now that one doesn't look right. Let's see what is going on. Oh, okay, looks like we do need to add some additional filters here. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm taking a look at, finding the 6 bars in a row. So let's mark this. This is our 6 bar in a row. And, okay. So we do need to filter, yeah, we do need to add a filter here on this comparison solver that's looking for, looking for the reversal bars with a wick. And let's see, let me name this solver first. Actually, I know I can add an easy filter to this, right? So what we're looking for is these, right? a series of up bars and then a reversal bar. And let's see. Actually, let me test my idea first. Okay, my first thought was that I could use a inflection solver here, and let me kind of demonstrate what I was thinking. So to find an easy way to find reversal bars is we can use our inflection solver and just have it look at price and have it look when the closing price reverses for us. So let's name this. Right, so we can see whenever price reverses direction, all these reversal bars, right, we get a signal here whenever price reverses direction. However, if we look at this guy here, we didn't actually, the closing price there equals the closing price of the next bar, right? So we didn't quite get a reversal in price. Price actually flatlined. It wasn't until the next bar that the closing price went down. So it doesn't always work on range bars. So you do have to kind of keep in mind when you're building stuff, different chart types, have different behavior. So in this case, even though this looks like a reversal bar, but technically the closing price didn't actually reverse on that. So what we actually really got was, the closing price of that bar was equal to the closing price of the next bar. So we got a flat. We didn't actually get a inflection there, or we didn't get a reversal. So the inflection didn't quite work, but I do know that essentially I need a down bar in this situation. So I can grab another bar direction solver. Right, so this bar direction solver, it's because that's a down bar. However, yeah, look at this. On a doji, right? Doji doesn't have a bar direction. Dojis don't have bar directions, so it doesn't work for a doji. So that's not quite right either. Um, let's see. Yeah, so for range bars, I think we're going to need a combination. Yeah, we're going to need a combination of things here. So let's build a little set of logic here. So the bar direction at least handles these, small body. So the bar direction handles the bar when it has a body. Now we need to build something that handles these dojis on these range bars like this, that finds these dojis. So let's go back to a comparison solver. And alright, so with this comparison solver, we're just going to compare various price points, right? So we know that if the close equals the low of the bar, right, that's what a doji is. A doji is the low of the bar equals the close of the bar. well, actually, no, a better way to state that is the open of the bar equals the low of the bar. Yeah, that's a down doji, right? If it was an up doji, then the open of the bar would equal the high of the bar. So let's set our indicator A and indicator B to price. And let's see here. So for a down bar, the open of the bar is going to equal the low. Alright, so for short output, for these down bars, we want a short output. So let's set this to the low of the bar. We'll set the long to the high of the bar. And we're going to change indicator B, we're going to change this from the close to the open. And the next step is to get our outputs correct here. So remember, we're looking for the open of the bar to equal the low, or the open of the bar to equal the high. So once again, we're going to use this A equals B output section here. And let's see if that works. We're still detecting these bars here. Okay. So that's not quite working as expected either. Okay, I need to go back and find that signal back here that was incorrect. There it is. Alright, let's circle this guy here. Yeah. Alright, yeah, so this comparison solver that I built that's looking for dojis here, it's still giving me a short signal right there, so that's not going to work either. Let's see. I'm going to change the open price back to the close price. Let's see how that works. Alright, yeah, I think that works. That works. Let's see. So essentially kind of what this solver was built for, right? This comparison solver was built for basically finding the direction of a range bar. So what I'm going to do, actually I don't think I even need this bar direction solver anymore. Let's see, let me take a closer look at everything. Yeah, so we're getting a long and a short output all the time now. And it's telling us whether we got a down bar or an up bar. It's matching perfectly. Yeah. Alright, let's go back to this section right here. Alright, so just to cover what we're doing again here, we're comparing the high and low of the bar to the close of the bar. So actually my original thought of comparing it to the close was the correct thought. Sometimes it's easy to overthink these things. But don't worry about overthinking it, because it's real easy just to kind of change your ideas. I was able to easily change from the open price to the closing price and find out that that is what works. So with this solver that we just built, this new solver looking at the bar direction, right, I can see on here on our bar in question, right, so remember we're getting a short signal here, which is incorrect. Right, that's actually incorrect. But if I look at this solver here that we just built, right, it's giving us a long output, and more importantly, there's no short output on that bar. Right, so there's no short output on this bar here with that false short signal. So if I connect that in, so now if I connect this in as a filter, now it's going to eliminate that false short signal there, that incorrect short signal. So there, we fixed that guy. Now let's scroll back and make sure that those other signals are still intact. And yep, there we go, there's our long signal. So that looks good. And let's find that other short signal. Yep, and here's our short signal there, and that's still intact. So let me just scroll through the chart a little bit more, see if there's any others. There's another one, and that looks correct as well. Yep, a bunch of up bars, and then a reversal. Yeah, 6 up bars, another reversal. So, right. So if you want to change the number of up bars, right, we can change this to require 7 or 8 up bars in a row. All you need to do is change this one solver here, right? So this bar direction solver, we have it set to look for 6 bars, and if we want to change our requirements to 8 bars, 8 up bars or 8 down bars in a row, all you gotta do is just change that to 8. And looks like so far I don't think we're gonna find 8 bars in a row, so let's change that to 6. You know what actually might be better than using the bar direction solver, right? So remember, the bar direction solver, you have to have a body. But what if one of these up bars doesn't have a body? What if it ends up being a doji, right? You still might consider that an up bar because it's an up doji. So let's see. I wonder if I can find something like that. Here's kind of what I'm looking at. Yeah, you can see we had 1, 2, 3, 4. Our fourth bar is a doji, and it doesn't have a body. Right, so the bar direction is not going to detect it as an up bar. But unfortunately, we only got 4, 5. We didn't get our 6 up bar, so this actually wouldn't work as an example. I'll see if I can find a spot that does work. Once again, let's see. Yeah, here's a bunch of up bars in a row with a doji in it. So here's our suspect. Let's take a look at that. Right. So if we take a look at the bar direction solver itself, right, we're actually looking at the solver itself. It doesn't count 6 up bars in a row because of that doji. However, remember this new comparison solver, this guy does actually include, it does include dojis. It considers them as an up bar. So what we could do, we could take this and we can use our, use our look back, and we can use our look back to look for, essentially the look back is going to look for 6 long signals in a row, right? 6 green signals in a row. So the way we can do that is that we can, first of all, we're going to, let's see, let's turn our displacement off for now. And let's set our look back period to 6. And let's see, our mode is going to be set to minimum this time. So we're going to set it to minimum. So here's our first up bar. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And our 6th up bar is marked like that. So there we go. There's our 6th one. I'll just mark it like that. Yeah. So this, I guess, using our comparison solver with a look back node is a little more flexible than using our bar direction solver. So let's disconnect that guy. We'll move this back here. Right, so now we can see, right, I've got this plugged in 2 places because I'm utilizing this comparison solver twice. All right, so I can utilize it to find 6 up bars. Let me get this all adjusted here. Here we go. So I can use it to find 6 up bars, and right, and then, but ultimately I'm at the end here, I'm reversing the output here, but let's see, yeah, we get, so we're starting here, and this is our 6th up bar, and then remember it gets displaced 1, it gets shifted forward 1, and then it's reversed to a short signal, and then the other solvers are what's looking for the wick and making sure that the bar's in the right direction. Let's take a look at that. Now, you know, this doesn't actually qualify because there's no reversal bar with the wick, but this actually might find some more signals in it. So let's take a look here. All right, so we know that one. And yeah, Yep, we know this one all has bodies in it. So I'm going to try and find another signal that has a doji in it, where one of the 6 up bars is a doji. Ah, yes, here we go. So this popped up with an additional long signal here. Right, so we had a bunch of down bars, and then we had a doji down bar, and then a doji up bar. So we actually found an extra signal there. So, alright, so if you're using range bars, you might have to make some exceptions like this. So, alright, let's see how this works on a minute chart. And we're getting something in the overnight session when basically price just doesn't move. Oil doesn't trade in the overnight session very well. So, but let's see if this technically is correct. Yeah, so we do have, either we have dojis or down bars, and then we do get a doji reversal here. So I guess, technically that meets our requirements, right? So it is working on minute bars as well. Oh, there we go. There's another. Once again, this is an overnight session, so you probably don't really have to worry about this because you wouldn't be trading the overnight like this. And yeah, so there we go. That's really not working well on, because it's not working well when we get all these dojis like this. Yeah, but you're not trading the overnight, so you don't really have to worry about that. And of course, you'd never get dojis like this during the regular trading hours. So we can just kind of ignore that. Yeah. All right, guys, have a good weekend. See you next week. Bye.